Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really profound concept from the Mystical Union sermon series. And, this touches on something literally every single one of us is going to face at some point: suffering, crisis, and those moments where you just feel completely abandoned. But right off the bat, I want to throw a totally counterintuitive idea your way based on these teachings. What if that brutal season you're in right now, the one that feels like a total abandonment, is actually a highly intentional divine training ground? Yeah, instead of being a sign that your life is falling apart, the text actually suggests it could be the ultimate proof that you are being closely held.
Okay, let's dive right into this. It's so easy, almost automatic really, to look at our hardships and instantly assume, well, I must have done something wrong, or to feel like we're walking through the fire completely alone. When the storm hits, honestly, the heaviest burden usually isn't even the crisis itself, right? It's that intense isolation we feel in the middle of it. But the source material from the Mystical Union series challenges that assumption head-on. Hitting a crisis absolutely does not mean things are just unraveling without a purpose. And it definitely doesn't mean you've been left to fend for yourself in the dark.
But look, before we get to the hope, we really have to acknowledge the harsh reality of trouble. The definition here is intense: to disturb, cause anxiety, worry, agitate, distress. It literally causes extra work and labor just to drag yourself through the day. We're not sugarcoating this at all. Trouble brings real, bone-deep exhaustion. And if you're breathing right now, facing trouble isn't a matter of if, but when. Life definitely has its beautiful moments for sure, but it also carries some incredibly heavy tribulations.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how the Greek text reframes this whole experience. The word used for this kind of rigorous discipline or correction is paideia, and it translates to a highly personal, special training from God reserved specifically for his people who have a distinct assignment. If we look at the book of Job, chapter 5, verse 17, it actually says, "Happy is the person whom God corrects," which, wow, right? It is incredibly hard to see that in the moment. But the source material completely reframes our hardest times. This isn't just some random punishment. It's actually presented as a rare privilege of divine preparation.
And that brings us to this absolutely beautiful paradox found in Job 5:18. The God who wounds is the exact same God who heals. The series shares a deeply personal anecdote from Brother June Mukaprobre that just hits the nail on the head. He talks about his youth battling this severe illness that was actually brought on by his own reckless behavior. He got to the point where he needed a major operation, but the Lord intervened just in time, leaving him with physical scars. Brother June points out that sometimes God allows the pain and leaves the scar, specifically to protect us from completely destroying ourselves. The big takeaway here? While the enemy breaks things to destroy them, God breaks things only to beautifully remake them. That is exactly why the classic writer Thomas à Kempis made such a vital observation. He basically said that a person doesn't lose anything if they have God for a friend. And if you have God for a friend, you literally have all things. Even during those incredibly painful, restrictive seasons of divine correction, when it feels like everything else has just been completely stripped away from you, having this relationship ensures you are never truly lost. According to these teachings, your core foundation remains entirely intact. And this brilliant illustration shows exactly how that relationship plays out in reality. The renowned thinker Charles Spurgeon used this deeply emotional analogy of a mother to explain God's response to our suffering. Think about a loving mother. When her child is perfectly healthy, she might leave that child in the very capable hands of a nurse or a caretaker. And spiritually speaking, Psalm 91 tells us God gives his angels charge over us to keep us safe in our daily lives. But when that child falls sick, the entire dynamic flips. The mother drops everything, cancels all her business, and steps in to attend to that child personally. So, in times of severe trouble, the dynamic shifts completely. Spurgeon notes that God essentially looks at his protecting angels, those spiritual nurses holding us when we're healthy, and says, "Stand aside, I will take over them myself." I just absolutely love that imagery. The core concept here is that when you are hurting the most, God doesn't outsource your comfort. No way. He takes over your care directly. He wants to hold his suffering child in his own arms. And this goes way beyond just, being in the room. It's about profound, intimate empathy. A mother holding her sick child hears the absolute slightest moan. She kisses their face, drops a tear of her own on their cheek, and whispers, "Don't weep and break my heart." This perfectly captures the heart of the Creator. The series really emphasizes that he is intimately moved by your tears. He isn't framed as some distant, cold theological concept just analyzing your struggle from afar. He is deeply personally engaged with your pain. Let's ground this emotional metaphor into a bedrock promise. The core truth running across all these texts is meant to show us that God promises his special, personal presence specifically in the time of trouble. And wherever he is present, well, there's the capacity for a breakthrough. The texts really want us to understand that God doesn't just watch from the sidelines and shout instructions at you. He steps directly into the crisis, right into the hospital room, right into the financial ruin, right into the heartbreak, completely with you.
Let's move on and see how this builds in the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, which outlines these just incredible divine guarantees. Notice the escalating dangers of life's elements here. Passing through the waters, crossing the rapid rivers, walking straight through the fire. The text doesn't say if you pass through them. It explicitly says when. But notice the absolute guarantee attached to every single one. I will be with you. You will not drown. You will not be burned. Why? Because you are walking right alongside the owner of the water, the owner of the river, and the owner of the fire itself. And just in case anyone doubts their worth in the middle of that fire, Isaiah continues with this fascinating economic reality of the ancient world. It says you will not be bartered for Egypt, Ethiopia, or Seba. To put that into perspective for us today, it's like saying the Lord will not trade you for America or Russia or literally all the wealth of the nations combined. Isaiah drops this economic reality in there to reassure the reader of their immense, irreplaceable value. According to the text, you belong entirely to a God who flat out refuses to trade you away, no matter how broken or messy you might feel.
So the absolutely crucial point is this declaration right here. I have called you by your name. You are mine. This represents an unshakable identity. Now, according to the law of double reference discussed in the sources, this applies to both natural Israel and to you as a spiritual child of God connected to Christ. When you're facing the darkest, most chaotic storms imaginable, this name-calling acts as your ultimate anchor. You are completely known, and you are completely claimed.
This brings us to John 15:5, which really lands the plane on the ultimate takeaway of this whole explainer. I am the vine, you are the branches. Apart from me, you can do nothing. The overarching theme of this entire series is that all of these trials, all of the fires, the floods, and the divine comforts we've been talking about, they all exist for one singular purpose: to forge a necessary, unbreakable relationship between you and the Creator. Because without that intimate connection, the text argues there's no true lasting fruitfulness in life. The crisis is simply the mechanism used to bind the branch tighter to the vine.
Which leaves us with this final, really vital question to reflect on. How does viewing your current crisis as a divine invitation change how you will face the fire today? I challenge you to really consider what these sources suggest. Stop viewing your pain as a sign of abandonment. The trouble you're facing right now might just be the exact moment God tells his angels to stand aside so he can draw nearer to you than ever before. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep digging into these fascinating concepts.